Oh, Deborah, if I can get a little bit of water, I'll show you. So today I would like to kind of... Good morning, Keyvan. Good morning, ladies. Thank you. That's very sweet. I would like to just look at the remainder of those topics that we have left, and I'm looking at it and I'm seeing that the most one would be the four horses and the subject of gender identity, which is a very difficult, touchy, and a very important subject. And so Gottman's research really brings to us to understanding of a very important factor, and that is, as Baha'is, we fix a lot, we put a lot of attention to virtues all the time. We talk about virtues. But what we don't talk about is that these virtues are expressed within the context of values. Without knowing our values, these virtues are not going to convey the message. I'll give you an example. The value of who we care about, who we love, who we defend, at the time of Moses was who? Who did we defend and love and protect and care about? The people of the tribe. What did we do to the people outside of the tribe? Not only cast them, what did they do? Kill them, rape them, pillage them, do whatever it is. The same values still exist in the world today. That is why we have Boko Haram, whatever it is, and this and that, and everybody out there, because they're practicing the values of the tribal time. We practice that among even some of the Baha'is. We say, oh, the Persian Baha'i is this, and we go into the conferences and we sit, we save a place for our particular friend, as though we are not friends with everybody. I don't understand. And we go into places, this is the opportunity to become friends with everyone. This is not a place to express our the whole sense of preferism, whatever it is that you might call it. So we are still a lot, as Baha'is, are living in the value system of tribal values. And out of that we express our virtues, and these virtues become deadly. Because they divide us. And that's how we know that's their deadly. They need anything that divides us, because the umbrella of Baha'u'llah has given us for the safety, salvation, and security of humanity is what? Oneness. That is the umbrella. That is the tabernacle. That's a safe haven. That is where we need to get into it within ourselves, to be in peace with ourselves, not to have constantly conflict within ourselves. It's not, it impairs us. And then with each other, and with the rest of humanity. So, we need to keep our eyes not just on the virtues, but our values. And look for those values within the writings. Our faith is a progressive revelation of values. That's what we have. We don't have progressive revelation of virtues, but virtues have remained the same for all the centuries. Nothing has changed. But the way we express them, how we express them, to whom we express them has changed drastically. So this is the progressive revelation of values. Really, all we care about in teaching the faith is really teaching the values. And so the way we express the virtues has to be within the context of these new values. The four horses of apocalypse that Gottman mentions, the first one is criticism. We have this very oxymoron kind of a view in the whole context of our culture, not the Baha'i culture, outside culture, legitimizing the whole process of criticism. We even call it constructive criticism. It is not acceptable in the faith. There is not such a thing as constructive criticism. We consult, we evaluate together, we do it together, and we look at the options, we look at the solutions, we pray about it, we come to the solutions, we put it into practice. If it works, it's fine. If it doesn't, go back to the drawing board again. I don't see anywhere in the writings says constructive criticism yet. And you have seen it, I haven't seen it. Even to our own selves. You know, children, when they see parents are very critical of themselves, they become distrusting of the parents. Oh, you're so wonderful, oh, you're so good, whatever. They don't trust it because they know that they have this attitude towards themselves. So this whole notion of criticizing, in that sense, does not exist. Bringing yourself into account has two components. Has one, to really look at your whole positive side, your successes, the things you did which was good, and also what are those things that you can change. So it's not a dwelling on the unpleasant things of life, but rather than notice it, you're aware of it, and change it, move on. Very interestingly, Gottman separates a very fine line. He says, there is something we call complaining, and there is criticism. And he makes a big distinction between the two. Complaining is, let's say you tell the child, you know, you should be home by 10 o'clock, and he's not there. You look at your watch, he's not there. You're thinking, finally it's 12 o'clock, you're thinking, what could have happened, what kind of danger? Is he lying somewhere in the ditch? Is he being attacked by someone? You're absolutely scared to death. And finally you think, maybe I should call the police. This is where you are. Fear is all over your body, you cannot sleep, you cannot sit, you're walking around. And then it all comes at 1 o'clock, no calls, nothing, the child walks in. Right? The thing that comes out in the parent is not, oh my beloved child, where have you been? No, that's not what comes out. What comes out is what? What the heck you think you are doing? Where have you been? You have no sense, you have no response. That's what comes out, right? Well, preferably we won't attack them. We will not attack them at the base. You're stupid, you have no sense, you have no responsibility, you do not think, you don't know what is right or wrong. You don't go there. That is really going for it. Yeah. What you do, you can say, you know, I have been, you explain your own situation, I've been going crazy all night, I've been running all over the place, I almost called the police, I almost had a heart attack. You know, you told me you'd be here 10 o'clock. Is that no 1 o'clock? You can look like, you can express your emotions, of vulnerable emotions, and say, you know, and then I want to be able to trust you. I want to be able to, for us to be able, you have to be able to have all the freedoms that you can have at this age. So I need for you to keep your word. So you ask them what you want them to do. So there's nothing, this is very strong, this is very severe, and if the relationship of the parent and this child has been very good and consistent, this would be a big explosion for them. They would not want to have this happen over and over again. It would pain them. That's one thing. The other thing is parent needs to accept that they have to repeat themselves over and over and over, but never get out of control with themselves. The key is not to get out of control with themselves. Your expressions, your face, should be always saying, I am having your best interest in mind, and I am responsible before God for your well-being. Never giving the expression that I'm out of control and I can do something, I can hurt you right now because I am so angry inside that I don't know which one is revenge and which one is discipline, which are completely two different things. Yes. You see, that's what is very critical, not to cross that line. That's trespassing. Yes.
One thing I wanted to share with the group is my own personal experiences in training. I find that the best way to avoid criticism is to state the fact. So as opposed to go, and I keep using the example of tardiness, you don't just go up to an employee or a team member and say, you're a tardy person. What you say is, hey John, sorry, I noticed on the 22nd of February, yesterday, whatever, you were late by 20 minutes. That's a fact. It's not criticism. And I find that human beings actually respond quite well to facts. And in my own experience, sometimes having to deal with up to 40 people in a managerial setting, and these are very, very experienced, hard-nosed people, I find that it brings the toughest person down to a very humble level when you mention the facts.
But how? The most important part is the body language.
The way you express yourself.
Exactly. The face, the body language, the tone of voice has to be what?
Well, it has to be respectful, calm.
Matter of fact.
That's right.
It cannot be, high pitched. You know you were 20 minutes late last night.
That's right.
I mean, that is, the form is the same, but the spirit, completely different.
And
so there's two things that dance together, is the form and the spirit. The spirit has to be very, very matter-of-factish, very calm.
And I noticed that injecting kindness into a situation like that also really helps and mitigates the emotions on the other side. When you're calm,
yes,
respectful, and kind,
yes,
the person will just scratch their head and say, yeah, you're right. And then you also, the word articulation. To articulate things, I think it really, really helps, whether you're dealing with a child or a mature experience at all. You articulate. I find that you explain why.
Police people get training for that. You remember, whenever they come to you as a result of traffic, how do they look like generally? Yeah, it's a matter of fact. So, you were... yeah.
Very relaxed.
They don't become... They never become happy. They train for that. That's what they know it is effective, because the person only has themselves to react to and not to react to the police. You don't want to distract the other person's attention to your own, because when you become angry in relation to something, then they would be reacting to us, because now they're defending themselves and now they're not able to focus on their own self. So that's exactly. And so any criticism, Gottman says, creates a situation of defensiveness, which is deadly. So now the whole relationship goes into attack, defend, and pretty soon that spirit becomes dominant in the relationship. That means love completely disappears, because in an atmosphere of fear and criticism, love cannot reside. It's a very dry land, there's no water here, there's no sun, nothing grows in it. Yes?
I just came in, but the things that you said we should not do, I did everything. And I wonder what damage I did.
What?
The criticism, the defensiveness, or the anger, and all that sort of things, I did it all to my kids. I wonder what kind of damage has done.
I think in parenting, we just continue, and we hope that the children will grow with us and they see and they're able. So I think in parenting, really is not very productive to keep going back and dwelling on what kind of damage I did. But when you keep your eyes on and forwarding the whole ship, and building relationship, mending relationship, giving more opportunities of very close conversation and heart-to-heart conversation as they grow older. Yeah. So, defensiveness, when people defend, that you already should know that this direction of this conversation is getting into some hot water. So you just need to reflect, pause, take a deep breath, back up. And reflect, pause, take a deep breath, back up for your own sake. You're trespassing. Defensiveness is, for example, you know, you just have no sense of cleanliness. Your room looks like a pigsty. What in the world is this? It smells horrible. Look at that. Don't you know what is being clean? That's attacking someone. You're criticizing. And if a child, they might not dare to say anything, but if they dare, it says, you're not clean yourself. No? At least they think that. And so that's defending. So here, what happens, defensiveness basically takes away the opportunity of the person to look at themselves, and they become basically reacting.
So it's a reaction to criticism.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. So the third host is contempt, which means the sense that, again, a person feels not only superior to the others because they know better, they know it all, they have a sense of contempt, like these other people, the look is like, who are you, kind of thing. I know it, I know what's going on. And so the sense of what comes into under contempt? Arrogance, superiority, what else?
Disrespect.
Disrespect, what else?
So you have no fear of God. Ultimately you have no fear of God.
That's very good, exactly, that's right in the center of it.
Omnipotence.
Exactly, and right at the center of it. Like this, the relationship has no other, the third point of the triangle does not exist because you've taken over. And this is really the place where people would become completely, they feel distant, they would remove themselves as far as possible. First, maybe they're mentally, emotionally, psychologically, maybe they cannot do it in the case of children, physically, in case of some marriages, they cannot do it physically. They stay in the marriage, but the marriage becomes dead, emotionally dead. So, it's deadly, don't get in there. So contempt, and then stonewalling. Stonewalling is really positive. I call it a possum syndrome. Have you guys ever attacked or dealt with a possum? I don't know what a possum is. What is a possum?
It's a long term.
This is kind of yes, a marsupial actually. It looked like a big, huge rat and a pig and the whole thing together. Ugly animal. It has got a whole big set of teeth, and it's like a tank. You cannot ever kill that thing. We tried once. Because it ate 8 of my chickens at one thing. We were sitting in the yard, and the whole bunch of guests, it crawled into the coop of the baby chicks. By the time I get there, 8 of them were demolished right there. The possum was just sitting there. And me and Nancy, who was in the kitchen, we went there, and the guests were there sitting, talking about very important kids, trying to get this It just did that. And so it got a little bit dangerous. We thought, okay, this is the next morning we come, I came to take him, and, bury him. Sitting there, with face like, who are you? So I had to bring a bucket and put him in the bucket, and me and Nancy got in the car and waded in the wilderness and threw the thing in the wilderness. So anyway, possum. So what the possum does, when you attack the possum is scared, his defense mechanism is play dead. And you think, well, most animals leave it alone, so that nobody wants to deal with the dead. And a lot of times our psychological response to an incident which is very, very, makes us very unsafe, and we don't know what to do, we can be helpless, is to play dead. And play dead appears in many forms. Depression is one of the forms of playing dead, believe it or not. Yes, we call it learned helplessness. So, anxiety is another form of playing dead. A lot of times, children especially, when the parents are having horrible conflicts and shouts and whatever it is, they do different forms of playing dead because they can distract attention from the parents towards themselves, and they defer the attention, so this way they think that unconsciously the whole system will go free. So when children start developing symptoms, it's very good to look at the relationship to see what is in there that they are acting out like that, just in case. So playing ultimate of playing dead is what? What is the ultimate of playing dead? Committing suicide. And the ultimate of playing dead for marriage is divorce. Exactly. So,
So how divorce can be? Divorce is you are actually taking action.
yeah, what are
You
you
are
killing?
taking the matters in your
What are you
hands.
killing? A marriage, which is a third entity. Baha'u'llah says this is a spiritual third entity that you're not, the husband and wife are not the only ones in it. The kids are sitting in it too. So, and you see the fallout of it when you work with parents who are going through that process. It's a very, very, very unsettling process to observe, and especially for children. So, yeah, you come to a place where you think that, well, I will have to kill this thing. You come to that conclusion. It's not an easy decision to make. Nobody gets into the marriage with the thought of destroying it. But for somehow things just kind of keep going and building and building and building. That's why I really think that premarital counseling is really fantastic in prevention of that because it breaks the ice. So my gift to any newly to be wed couple is send them to premarital counseling because they learn at least that when they need help, they go first right away for it. They will not wait till it festers and all kinds of calluses forms and stuff like that. So it's very important to break that ice. That this is something easy. You see it, couples do that. But they're comfortable with it. Just like the 3 months after marriage, they go, can we come? We need to resolve something. Yeah, that's great. Because right at the beginning, before it forms a lot of, calluses, it's great. You can take care of it. But it wastes many years, festers or whatever, and a lot of hard feeling builds, and then you really cannot return back to the loving, feeling that you wanted to have in marriage. So 4 horses, remember that, okay? And then I'm going to go into some of the most hateful, it's offensive, most superlative, most hateful characteristic of man is what? How come it's so dark in there?
Should we switch the light?
Why it's so bright in here? One must expose the praiseworthy qualities of the souls and not their evil attributes. Must, he says. One must. Let me see if I can play with the light in here. No?
We can change the.
I don't know how to make it.
No, it's okay, we can see it.
Okay, never mind, I'll read it. Because we don't have time. The friends must, again the word is must, overlook their shortcomings and faults and speak only of their virtues and not their defects. So again, we're looking at a culture, developing a civilization that has a great sensitivity and a great desire to look for the positive. So when you do focus on the positive of the kids, real positive, not just, oh, you're so wonderful. They're not going to believe it. They know you're just making it up. But you say, I really like the way that you folded this thing. It's so nice, neat and clean, all the edges. Be specific about the way you give the praise, so they know what you're talking about. They can really take it in. The other thing is this whole notion of self-esteem. More and more literature is coming out. First of all, I really do not see anywhere the word self-esteem in the faith. I have not yet seen that from the body of self-esteem. And so this whole notion of self-esteem came into the being, and then it has taken its own course. Now it's evolving, in fact, very interestingly, more and more discovery that self-esteem is, if it is such a thing, is not a function of you tell somebody how wonderful they are, but rather it's a function of focusing them on outside of themselves and focusing on serving others. So this whole notion of accustoming them to hardship and also directing their attention to caring for others. Now the new research is saying the more a person focuses on the well-being of others, the more they feel good about themselves. The more they focus on themselves, the less they feel good about themselves. So self-esteem is not what previously practiced, that, oh yeah, you know, how wonderful you are such a star, or you're this and you're that, and that doesn't work.
I still have, I'm challenged to find how to balance this act, which is seeing the kids doing something wrong or at fault or some characteristics. And when I keep on praising or addressing other virtues that they do well, and somehow they keep on doing the things they're not doing well, if I don't address it, that means I'm not doing my job as a parent. But address it, I'm not.
Could you give me the example, just a real example?
Yeah, you go.
Let me think something particular.
That you really, really want to address it.
Okay, I think I
Okay,
don't want to waste everybody's time. I'm going to think of something particular and then talk to you.
I'll tell you one. I have one.
A
child- okay.
Yeah. I'm struggling with my children for many years now to put the toilet seat every time they go to the toilet.
You know,
That's an internal fight.
I give you,
But I keep on praising them every time I see it properly. They say, oh, thank you, Leona. Thank you, Skander. You remembered. I really like that. And then explain all the things, for girls and school, you have to be careful, explain the whole consequences and stuff. And still, I see this toilet seat.
let me be quick now. Forgive me for cutting you because of the time.
No problem.
How important is, from 1 to 10, in the range of battles you want to pick with your children, this toilet seat?
No, you're right, it's not.
Okay, so I give you an example. So the husband and wife come to the therapist and they have a whole list of stuff that they are fighting about. And one of them is that my wife leaves the closet door open every night. I have to get up to go to the bathroom, and I have been hitting my head, and I've got scars against this closet door. And doesn't matter how many times I tell her, she leaves the closet door. So we said, okay, there's a whole list, let's go over it. So we resolve a whole lot of issues. Towards the end, we come again and now across this closet door. We said, so should we deal with the closet door? He said, no, never mind it. I'm okay now. And we said, okay, so what do you do? He said, what? No, I figured out what to do. Now when I go pick it up in the morning and then in the middle of the night, I just go like this. So my hand hits it. She's still leaving it open. Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to, when you're telling me something difficult, I'm looking for something that really is either dangerous or is going to be a very critical. So you really think that this is an important battle, you need to choose, because it's going to take a conflict. It's going to take for you to butt heads with it. So not everything we pick is going to be worth it. If you choose to talk about the toilet seat, please be nice every time you want to talk about it. If man were to care for himself only, this is the self-esteem. He would be nothing but an animal, for only the animals are thus egotistic. So if any of us come ever near this issue of self-esteem and think that self-esteem means you take care of yourself, be proud of yourself, be this of yourself, be about yourself, that's not it is. It's how to serve others. Just be like Abdullah. That's how he had a great deal of confidence. And Abdullah's confidence did not come because he thought he was all-knowing, all-wise. Because he was really able to submit himself to the will of Baha'u'llah. That's all. The more he could do it, the more he was confident. The less he could do it, the less he was confident. In Yahweh, he would say, pray and cry and say, please, make me a dust. Okay. In the strongest marriages, this is actually very interesting. Look at Gottman. Before Gottman, this was unparalleled, by the way. It was like new value entered into the process because of his research. In the strongest marriages, husband and wife share a deep sense of needing. They don't just get along, they also support each other's hopes and aspirations and build a sense of purpose into their lives together. That is really what I mean when I talk about honoring and respecting each other. That's Gottman. And it is like, woo, this was like like, by the way, I especially picked this reference, which is the long obligated prayer, by the way, that all of us know what it is. All of us read it all the time. I don't know how many of us really dive into the meaning of every metaphor and every word, because in my experience, my own self-experience, since 15 I've been reading it, and every single morning when I get up and say that, it's like, oh my goodness, oh. And so there are some parts of it I still don't have the answer to. So I'm using a lot of that. So what comes to your mind, the question is, when we read in the long obligated prayer, this stranger, you're referring to yourself, this stranger, hastening to his most exalted home, beneath the canopy of thy majesty and the precincts of thy mercy. So we refer to ourselves as who? Why? Why? Why Baha'u'llah wants us to say that? Okay, we don't know ourselves. What else?
Relative to his concept of the best behavior, the best characteristics, I am so far from it, I consider myself a stranger to those values.
Okay, fair enough. We better mean it. Because most of us come across so arrogant in our way of deciding for ourselves that that doesn't come true, generally. At least within myself. I don't know it. It's just, that's how it comes. Okay, so then, the other one is, this transgressor, that's a very strong word. This transgressor, seeking the ocean of the thy forgiveness. How many of us really know what we're talking about when we say that? Do we really not only know it, feel it, mean it? Because it takes great deal of insight to be able to know what they're talking about when we say this transgressor. So who is a transgressor? What did I do to become a transgressor?
I can give you a long list. Just ask all my friends.
But the transgressor is the one that breaks the rule knowingly,
Yes.
Okay.
consciously.
Okay, that's one way of looking at it.
Right? You know
Do
that
we
you
do
know
that
that,
all of
but
us?
still you are breaking it.
Okay, so...
Like, you know, backbiting,
Okay.
etc., etc. You know that you're not supposed to backbite.
Okay.
That you're doing it. So
As
you're
I
a
said,
transgressor.
since we're exploring it, I'm open to all of this. But I tell you, I don't know exactly what is it that the domain and the scope of this word. What is exactly is it that I am not doing aside from deliberate breaking? Is there anything else? Is it just because I'm not breaking any law intentionally that I'm not a transgressor? But this is in the long obligated prayer. Every time I say it, I have to say it.
I think that's one type, but I think all types. I mean, there are many times in my own experience, I often talk about it as waves in the water. I'm a boat, my own boat, you have your own boat, and then I look behind me and I see my wake hit against your boat, and I realize, oh shoot, I don't know exactly what I did wrong, but somehow I offended or I hurt someone, and I look behind me in time and I realize, I gotta go and say hi to Heather and fix up. I don't even know necessarily what I did wrong. I remember we had a conversation about something. Maybe I said it roughly. So transgressor to me is again any deviation from Baha'u'llah's life. Some are known and some are unknown, but we can smell the effect. I think so. If we live that, bring that self to account, we look back and we say, oh shoot.
So I'm throwing it at you, basically. I would, in the language of the kids, go figure. Because I don't know.
You know, the beauty of prayers, of different prayers and readings, is exactly what you are. Human beings, as we grow, our meanings of the words and our experiences in life change. The fact that this, after all this year, or whatever it is, you say the prayer, and you say and find new meanings, it's all purpose. The purpose of it, if it was some boring list or prayer, you would say, God, we do this and this and finish, you'd be done. Then you find it, whenever you read it, abstract. My mind is going to be 50 other places. By doing this, each day your definition of transgressor is going to be changing. Your definition of stranger is going to be changing with your character.
I hope so.
It should be, because that would mean your capacity is not growing. So as our capacity grows from you and all that, your definition of the prayer keeps evolving.
I certainly hope so, because again, one of the passages in the right over here, the saying of the obligated prayer is one of the fruits of it, supposed to be greater degree of humility. And so how do we become humble is by understanding in relationship to this beloved, who are we? Okay, so this transgressor. And then we say, we ask ourselves, who are we and what do we want? Every day we ask ourselves that we say, thy forgiveness has emboldened me. So where does this being emboldened or courageous or audacious, where is this coming from? Is it because I'm so knowledgeable, so well, so wonderful? Where is it coming from? Out of his? He's just out of his forgiveness. Because we know that Baha'u'llah says, if it was out of his justice, no living being would be deserving to be on earth. So that's the other extreme. So again, thy mercy has. So where is my strength is coming from? Out of his mercy. Now, if my strength comes out of his mercy, do I really should dare, or should I ever dare to put myself in the face of somebody else and see myself as superior or better or whatever it is?
Is it possible to apply this in our relationship, mother to children, parents to children? No?
Yes.
Is it good? I didn't do the
Yeah, I mean, I see the correlation of applying these principles also in the relationship between parents.
Any relationship.
Huh?
Absolutely,
Forgiveness,
all relationship.
mercy.
Absolutely, all relationship. And in the same way, also in relationship to your forgiveness towards your children.
Yeah.
And their forgiveness towards you. It's just always, it's part of, this is a relationship. The prayers are really relationship mysteries unveiled, given to us. Okay. And so there are three relationships, by the way. Our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with each other, our relationship with the beloved. It's a triangular relationship. These are the three main relationships that exist. Thy call has awakened me. So how many times you wake up your children? You will wake them up. And he calls us, what is one thing that he calls us with every morning? The sun, exactly. Thy call has awakened me. And then in Islam, there is the call to prayer, right? You read the ways, Bible in the morning, put on the microphone. The whole city rattles with the sound of this guy who's saying the azan, waking everybody for the call to pray. Thy grace has raised me up and led me unto. I'm just going to pass through these because, but you're going to think about it. Then he says, but then you have to say, who otherwise am I, that I should dare to stand at the gate of the city of thy nearness, or set my face towards the light that is shining from the heaven of thy will? Who? I mean, it's just like expression of great sense of what?
Humility.
This great sense of humility. So the feeling has to be, in that moment, always prominent feeling in time of saying your prayer is great sense of nothingness, humility, undeserving. And again, from the heaven of thy will, that he gave us this information, this knowledge. Why he wants us to say? Why does Baha'u'llah wants us to say every day? Thou seest, oh my Lord, this wretched creature knocking at the door of thy grace. I remember that is a very hard word. I remember one day I was giving a course here many years ago, the power of love and the love and power, something like that. I don't remember what it was. And this one young woman, she got really angry and she said, I never said that part. Okay, why not? She said, because I'm not wretched. Okay, well, what can I say? I mean, but Baha'u'llah says, say this. And the question is, what does he want us to think? What does he want us to feel? What does he want us to ask for? wants us to look at when he says this wretched creature? What's the picture? How many of you really feel hesitant to call yourself wretched? I don't know what I did, but I can call myself that. So it's really beyond our imagination if we look at it in a certain way, but this is what he wants us to say.
The way I deal with this is I think it's got to do with a point of reference. I don't think, in its classical term, or it's in a common English term, wretchedness is, I just imagine someone extremely poor. Homeless would be a very high level. I mean, much less than that is wretchedness. But I don't think in our human relationships, we need to consider ourselves wretched to each other. This quotation is, "Thou seest me, O my Lord," relative to him and to the standards that he would wish for me. And in that sense, I see myself as being a big gap between, I'll call the word perfection, and myself. Now, I'm everyday striving, and that's fine, but relative to fellow humans, I think this has to do with a different frame of reference. So in that sense, I'm quite comfortable to call myself wretched. But then if you ask me, for example, you come to me, I'm an engineer, and you ask me opinion, I don't see myself wretched, I have nothing to share to you. Because I'm a professional in my career, I'm not wretched in that, but that's a different frame of reference, isn't it? Or a parent and a child relationship that I have.
Yeah, that's a very, 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 very important and deep phrase to reflect upon. And as we reflect more, we discover more, and we come to greater sense of understanding God willing as we go in.
Well, one of the self-realizations that I actually had sitting here, and I'm hearing that this is important too. And why wouldn't I face my children as this, right? With this same kind of humility, where I'm the parent and I know best and I'm the boss and all the shit you might have heard of you. What if I'm really this wretched creature, knocking, homeless person, knocking at the door of God's grace? And that's the frame of reference with which I address my child. I'm not perfect, I'm not asking you to be, I'm not,
And again, I am offering this whole thing as a point of exploration for all of us, because this is something that we all say, and we're not going to be solving these mysteries in one sitting, but I'm just bringing it into focus. So, this evanescent soul seeking the river of everlasting life from the hands of thy bounty. Why do we have to say that? Thine is the command at all times, O thou Lord, the Lord of all names. And mine is resignation and filling submission to thy will. How many times have we come across a place where we know what the will of God might be?
Comment just about what you said. It also says in the writings, "Turn thy sight unto thyself, that thou mayest find me standing within thee, mighty, powerful, and self-subsisting." So I think it relates very well to this, because we're nothingness and God is everything, and all of our glory comes from God, and it's all a reflection of Him. And so I think we can frame it with our children that our strength comes from God, mine and yours, and all. God is the source of all of this, and this is who we turn to for that, in a positive sense.
Which means, only time we are strong is when we surrender our will to Him. It's not out of our own. So whenever we reflect His light, then we are light. Whenever we reflect our own self, we're darkness.
And I think maybe to the point is that, you mentioned that one of the points of this prayer and this constant, God is all glorious and I am nothing, right? Our obligatory prayers are the wonderful examples of that. Is that we should not just understand that this humbleness is in the sight of God and is only in relationship to God. That great humility to every soul. Absolutely. It is in, right? And I'm not master of that, right? I think in my...
Well, it's hard. It's hard, and then having the message to our children that all of us, even as parents, we are a becoming. We are not And we have a responsibility towards them before God to do, and that comes when you really give consent. Oh goodness. I don't know why Baha'u'llah put that burden on the back of the parents, because I tell you, there comes a time you just like, somebody else take that responsibility. But when you have to do that, you say, this is what I humbly can think and come up with in the line of the responsibility that is on my shoulder, that he put it on my shoulder. I have to do my best to be able to stand up as much as I can in front of him and say, I did my best. I gave it all. And that's really all it is. But that doesn't mean you're always right. Because the faith, fortunately, is not about right or wrong. It's about do your best, rely on him, be ready to go back to the drawing board if things didn't go right.
I was just thinking how that humble posture of being that House of Justice talks about is just
Yes.
puts it in such a
Yes.
nice sound way.
And we need to really live it. We cannot be saying that and turn to each other and say, oh no, you're not doing it right. This is the only way it is right. Yeah. We need to be very aware when we do that to each other because I've seen it. No, that's not the institute process. This isn't what
Right.
And you also set up routines in the home that put this into practice, right? I mean, saying prayers together, looking at the holy words together, reflecting on the meaning as a family, and trying to live that. You show that humble posture of learning by looking at the Word of God and all of us striving. You know, and so I think in our actions we also can manifest that whole posture.
Did you see the mother this morning who was doing the devotions when she was, and they were singing the Hindi version of Blessed is God? What was she doing? She was weeping. And you know, children feel that, they see that. They are immensely moved by that. They get it, that the prayer, this prayer moves the captain of our ship. And therefore, this whole ship is governed by that force. So they get it. So emotion is really a key element, is the way we use and the way we are in tune and the way we are really feeling what they're saying. So a person standing there before, and there's one of the, I think he's Tarzan or somebody says, he says it's okay, do your obligatory prayer in front of your children. Let them see how you cry and weep and you go on your knees. Let them see you in that state. Don't hide it.
And just to kind of point on what you were saying, you get into a routine at home and you say that, read the writings and say the prayers. A lot of times, Heather's the one that will read, or the kids will read. And since I'm not very good with comprehending a lot of it, she's the one that ends up sort of explaining it to all of us. And I kind of feel like I'm not really contributing like she is. And so I wonder sometimes when my kids, not see me as...
What would you say you're
Maybe.
not comprehending?
Okay, when the people read the writings outside, or out loud and so forth, a lot of times, like Heather and I read gleanings and things like that. She has to read it because, like when I was a kid growing up in Catholicism, don't even ask about how to understand that. And it's like, well, just trust us. So like you read a writing or anything and if I don't understand it, she'll clarify for me what he's saying or what's being said. And a lot of times when we read the writings at home, it's kind of the same thing. So sometimes when we're reading that or Heather's reading something, the kids have questions and I kind of step up and have questions. I kind of feel like, well, because it just kind of goes back to how your kids perceive you. I think, well, my kids perceive me as like not knowing anything because mommy's explaining that,
It has nothing to do with
I kind of feel like it falls on her,
It has
and it
nothing to do
shouldn't
with
fall
what
on
you
her. I
say.
should understand it too, and I should be able to explain it to them.
Not necessarily explaining, but what would be very important is they would look to your face, and they see your face, and they see if your face shows those emotions. Like, let's say if they can see it, they tune to you. If they see you
Oh, yeah, there's some prayers that hit me, and they see that, but when they ask a question about like its meaning and why is Daddy this, and I can't explain it. A lot of times I'm sorry, but
That's
Heather
all right.
has to,
It's all right, because they know you're moved, and that means you're like an instrument, and you're playing in this orchestra. If our instrument can be part of this order stuff, which is about emotions really, it's not about cognition. And really, Baha'u'llah talks about an understanding heart. He doesn't talk about heart when understanding head. So a lot of our learning is about the head, but really, truly, the understanding of you look at the history of the faith, majority of the early believers gave everything. Salman, who used to bring the whole life of his, 6 months traveling to Holy Land, taking the tablet, 6 months going back. You know some of the most profound tablets of Baha'u'llah, the tablet of Salman, which is one of the most profound tablets, is to Salman. Salman didn't have any education, he couldn't even read these tablets. He couldn't, but he understood them because it's about the heart. It's not about the head. So you ask for understanding, it will be given to you. And the children can see it, can feel it. Trust me. Because that's the way system is. That's the way to intone, O my servant, the verses of God that have been received by thee, as intoned by them who have drawn nigh to him, that the sweetness of thy melody may kindle thine own soul. He didn't say your intellectual conversation.
I guess if we all
It's just vocabulary words, you know, it's not that much.
It is your emotional exchange with them. They say something and you beam and you go towards them. You beam and you look at them. That's what does it. And every parent has that capacity. Baha'u'llah never gives us conditions that are not approachable, because it would be injustice. So,
Just very quickly to add to that,
Yeah.
I have a neighbor down the street who's an atheist, and he simply refuses to believe in God. He's a very nice man, a lot of virtues, and he attended, Yeah, we have a neighbor who's an atheist, and a good friend of ours. He decided to accept our invitation to the devotional gatherings, and what was amazing, it was like an experiment, proven. He watched these 20 people at my mom's house say prayers in French, Italian, Persian, English. And at first, the first round, he refused to grab a prayer book. The second round, he got up and grabbed the prayer book. And then when we left, we walked back home. On the way back, he said to me, a lot of those prayers were in languages that I didn't understand, but he goes, I felt it. He said, I felt something happening within me. To this day, he still remains an atheist, but he talks about that experience.
one of the passage from the Quran, it says, when one climbs up this ladder in marriage, mysteriously the other starts climbing, mysteriously. And the relationship becomes united and one in obedience to this. And this is the obedience, this is the surrender of heart. So the beginning is the surrender of heart. The thought will really follow as the heart. So it's really a lot more focus in the faith on the heart. That's what I was listening to the youth, and as somebody was talking, they all raised their hand like that. I said, no, you don't do that. Because when you raise your hand, that means you are right now in your head, and you're not able to listen to what the person. So I want you to put your hand on your heart. So they all did, and they all did. Every time they would raise their hand, somebody wants to say something, no, like that. I would look at them, and they would just put your hand on their heart.
Oh.
Because you want to be listening, you want to pay attention to this instrument that is the place that Baha'u'llah chose for himself. You don't want it to just ignore it and just go in the head, because the world out there is just competing over this part. And this part is really without the soul is nothing. Nothing. You know, discovering more and more. Neuroscience is telling us this is a machine. It's nothing.
Well, in a very strict, like hierarchical culture where there's like the strict hierarchies, and parents decide everything. Your children, you're basically kind of like the traditional Chinese way of thinking is the children are the properties of parents. They can decide things for you because they can make decisions for you. So I guess that's kind of how I grew up, and then realize how much better this can be, and then humility played a part, because I guess I really want to kind of break the cycle instead of seeing children as they're just little us that we can do anything to, but seeing them as kind of sacred beings with the souls within them. They're just in temporary care of us. And I think that made a huge change in me of how I see my relationship with my children, and then actually letting them express themselves, bring out what I guess they're meant to, I don't grow to be. So I thought that was a big change in my thinking.
Thank you. Talking about the gender issues, so because we have 5 minutes, so try to see if I can cover it the way it makes sense. The subject of gender identity has a very interesting word in it, and the word is identity. Abdullah talks about multiple identities. I want you to Google that. Multiple identities. He has a beautiful passage that is, he says, if the friends could be like the sheaves of light. So I want you to Google that word, sheaves of light. And it's very interesting when you look at the sheaves of light. It reminds me of the time when there was a 9/11, and then in place of the two towers, what did they put? Two huge floodlights. These floodlights going all the way up to the heaven. And the picture of it, and I kept that picture, there's really, the sheaves of light, but you can't tell the difference. These two sheaves of light, these many rays of light, in form of two towers, they were mixed together. There was no distinction. There was just light is one. I mean, and everything we see is from sun. There are many millions of sheaves of light, but what do we see? It's just one light. So Abdullah talks about that. And then we have in the writing this whole notion of our highest identity. What is our highest identity? If we have multiple identities, we are a parent, we are a woman, we are a man, we are a child, we are an adult, we are poor, we are rich, we are high class, we are low class, whatever things that we create in order to give ourselves all these layers of identity, right? Well, what is our highest identity? What is it? God's creation. What comes to your mind? Our highest identity. Spiritual beings. Servants of Baha'u'llah. You ask all humanity, everyone out there, people are not highest. What is their highest identity? Actually, there is a very fascinating talk by one of the Stanford's professor that our highest identity has to do with our spiritual reality. Does our spiritual reality have gender? Is it male or female? The only male or female we hear in the writings is really in the context of the intercourse between the spirits, the positive and negative, by the way, forces that come together. And in fact, even in the covenant we refer to Baha'u'llah and Abdullah, the intercourse between these two spirits brought about the child of the covenant, which is the will and testament of Abdullah. You see, it's a spiritual, in the spiritual world, but it's not the same as what we define it in the whole notion of way we understand it. That's one element we have to kind of consider. The other thing is with the way we have really decided to connect having sexual intercourse with love. And we will say, we made love. I don't know what has to do with love. I know many couples who have very good sex life and they absolutely hate each other. Absolutely, they divorce. They're extremely sex life. Because it has nothing to do with each other. It's just like being able, one of the famous psychotherapist researchers early on had a wonderful parallel metaphor for the whole issue of how do we discuss sex and what kind of a metaphor can we use for it. He said eating. Eating is the best metaphor for it. So you go to a restaurant, you want to go to a restaurant, you say, what restaurant do you want to go to? Mexican or Chinese? He says, I want to go to Chinese. So from 1 to 10, how much do you want to go to Chinese? Oh, 5. Oh, from 1 to 10, I like to go 9, I like to go to Mexican. You talk about, this is an issue, this is a most intimate, most vulnerable place, a husband and wife, in the context of the faith. Baha'u'llah puts it in the context of marriage. Outside the marriage, sexual relationship does not become a spiritually fortifying energy and force. Why? Because marriage is the foundation of building civilization and society, right? Marriage is the context where it's selflessness, because children come, the minute they come, what do parents become? Selfless, they have to, otherwise this whole building will come down. So it's an institution that will really put us together through this mill to go climb up the mountain, to be able to learn the ways to be humble and to raise the next generation who can mention his name. So outside the marriage, according to the spiritual laws of God, sex does not provide a spiritualization of marriage. Within marriage it does, because it is within the context of respect and relationship and fortifying the relationship. It is not an entitlement, please. I go to conferences. I just came from a conference in Manhattan Beach. It was about couples conference. And this expert about sexuality came and said that porno is okay, watching porno is okay for couples, for men to go watch porno. I mean, there was no limit. And according to his expertise, and he's in San Francisco area, he's the best expert, well known, has a newsletter and everything, and he was very audacious, standing in front of the whole crowd, and guess what? Nobody dared to challenge him. People are so scared to challenge this issue. Absolutely intimidated. Because there's a culture in there, and there's a force in there, and if you say anything, you are outdated. So, then when it comes, so he said, the whole act into existence because of porno business. Maybe he's right, I don't know. But that's how they look at it. This is a business. This is a multi-billion-dollar business. Love has nothing to do with sexual intercourse. There are all kinds of other ways of expressing love. So just framing it in there is not in harmony with what. So it would be nice if early on parents can have some wise discussion with their children as they are ready to, or subjects will come, because the subjects are coming up in the schools everywhere, actually, not only in the children. So the question of your identity, we are all spiritual beings. We continue to grow as spiritual beings. All the rest of our identities continuously will change and evolve. So don't go put yourself in any box for any kind of lower identities. Just keep your eye on your spiritual highest identity and move towards that. So I'm just going to summarize it in that sense. I hope this is helpful to just give you a frame. And as far as genetics is concerned, by the way, that whole issue is very interestingly, it's not about our genes, it's about how we express our genes in everything. So it's not we have this gene or that gene, is how do I choose to express? Otherwise, how will I come to this world? Why would he come if everybody was subject to their genetics? Right? Because we can choose the expression of our genetics. Even in the alcoholism and all those things, this is a proven fact. Okay, so I hope this is that's a kind of a good critique. That's a good too critique. Yeah. Too critique. So I hope you have at least some there is people in the crowd here that do parenting and are involved in this. I'm sure you will take it to much more far because the writings are there. I appreciate your listening.